Orale, bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFP podcast. This is your host, Jorge Martin. NFL Insider Series is rolling, and it's doing great things. We're getting so much information from our invitados, our special guests, people bringing us that boots on the ground, that great information on all the teams. And I mean, mi amigo Troy is going to be bringing us some great stuff right now. But first off, I want to make sure, remember, we're on YouTube. Give us a like and subscribe. We've already gotten some new subscribers already. If you're new to this channel, make sure to give us a like and subscribe. Set those notifications because we're going to keep having these NFL Insider Series coming up almost daily through till the start of training camp. And also want to make sure when you go to underdogfantasy.com, use that promo code Familia 23, Familia 23, if you want to do it in Spanish. You're gonna get matched. The first $100, you're gonna get a second $100 on top of it. It's playing best ball, the draft. You get to keep drafting, and you just keep enjoying getting the great practice, but also you're getting a little skin in the game. With those fantasy drafts, and you're just gonna keep drafting all the way to kickoff in September. So let's do it. Underdogfantasy.com, Familia 23. And also want to, our invitado de lujo. I mean, gosh, I had such a great time talking to him. I mean, there are a few people who are as passionate about their jobs as our special invitado, Troy Renck. I mean, he is an institution when it comes to Denver sports. He's been covering them dating back to the John Elway days. He's on Denver 7. He's got the Broncos podcast. He's really, really been my go-to guy, my amigo, when it comes to the Broncos. And we even talk a little baseball here and there. So just to have a little fun. So let's get ready to ride into Broncos country, familia. Bienvenido, amigo, Troy Renck. Troy, thank you.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed my appearance last year. Jorge, you do great work. So thanks again for thinking of me and allowing me to be on the show.
Oh man, it's been awesome. And it's a new regime. Sean Payton come over. I mean, I know you've talked about it where, the ownership group kind of talked about different possibilities, but landing on Sean Payton, a Super Bowl winning coach, someone who's considered an offensive genius. What does that mean? That changeover mean coming into this new season?
Well, it's their fifth coach in 8 years, which adequately explains why they've stunk for most of that time. You can't continue to have changes at GM, quarterback, head coach. And they think with Sean Payton now, with Greg Penner taking over as the CEO, with the Walton Penner ownership group, they wanted someone to change the culture, create more discipline, more accountability, more stern, and someone with, frankly, more experience. I thought it was going to be Jim Harbaugh. There was a time it felt like it was going to be Harbaugh, whether he wanted it, whether he didn't. Then it looked like for a day it was going to be DeMeco Ryans. And he says, no, I want to go interview with Houston. And they're like, oh, wait, no. And they go back to Payton, who they'd have interest in the whole time. And I think it's going to benefit them. Whether you see him as their first choice or third, ultimately getting a guy for 16 years who was one of the best coaches in the NFL with a history of having disciplined teams and good special teams, I think it's ultimately going to help this team. It may not all manifest this season, Jorge, because he's doing an HGTV makeover of this roster. I mean, Deion Sanders is the only one bigger makeover at CU, but there's 27, 28 guys gone from last year already. He's bringing in his type of player, and he gives off Mike Shanahan vibes to me. He's not intense. He's so detail-oriented. He knows where every blade of grass is. His nuances in his teaching are so dramatically different than what we've seen from even Hackett or Vic Fangio that it just feels like they've got the guy. Now, I don't know if he has his roster. That's a different story. But he is in charge. How will it manifest it initially? You will see a team that's better disciplined because they led the league in penalties for almost all of last season. And you will see a better team on special teams. They've been a tire fire on special teams since Super Bowl 50. Just been awful. So that you can kind of fix. I don't know about the offense and defense yet. I don't know. They should be better. They should be a better team. Does that mean 9-8? Does some people think 11 wins? I'm not ready to go there until I see what the offense looks like. But they're going to be more physical. They're going to be tougher. They're going to run the ball. They're going to be better disciplined and play special teams. So they should have a winning record. After that, I don't know yet. I just don't know. But Payton is in charge. We had Peyton Manning as the sheriff. The new sheriff in town is Sean Payton. He is running everything. It is going through him, and there's a sense of accountability and discipline, frankly, that was absent last year.
And one of the things, there were such great expectations for Russell Wilson coming into last year. And I know we talked about it. I bought in, so many people bought in, and it was just, it was rough from the beginning, from the game in Seattle, and it just wasn't there. But there were some kind of rumblings at the end where it looked like maybe there was a sense of encouragement. But with the new regime, and because of the finish, and with Sean Payton coming in, having worked with Drew Brees, obviously he's not exactly like Russell Wilson, but Wilson has always been a worker. What is it? Can we expect something better from Russell Wilson this year, to maybe the point where he's usable on fantasy leagues?
Yeah, well, outside of him, sitting on a whoopee cushion every Sunday, it'll be better than last year. I mean, it was like, just go outside, step on rake, have it hit you in the face. I mean, that was their season last year. And it wasn't they were just bad, that they were embarrassingly bad topic of conversation, because they had so many nationally televised games that it was just, they were from the 64-yard field goal in Seattle. Russell actually played pretty well that game. They had 2 fumbles at the 1-yard line. They should have won that game. But rather than go 4th and 5 with the guy you just paid $252 million to, you decide, let's let a kicker try a 64-yarder in a stadium that's never had a field goal greater than 56 yards. Oh, yeah, and the wind's blowing in. Everything about that decision just reeked of stupidity and arrogance. And it bled in. Then the next couple of weeks, we got the Houston game where the home fans are counting the play clock down, Jorge, because they can't get in and out of a huddle. And so what happened? People are like, what went wrong? And the Cliff Notes version of it is this. Russell arrives in Denver, decides, I'm going to play 10 more years, and he's going to reinvent himself as Tom Brady or Drew Brees. The one thing I didn't see in training camp was like, man, he's not running around. That's his secret sauce. But of course, he's not going to do it in camp. It's no big deal. And they didn't play in the preseason. So, but I was noting it like, he's not coloring outside the lines. That's when he's great. But I figure he's going to do it when the game comes up. Oh, no, he's not going to do it. And it didn't work early. He's not a timing guy. The offensive line wasn't very good. They get injured. You're playing backups on the line, backup as receiver, and you're trying to run a 3-wide offense. So it would be the equivalent, I've said, of if you have a curveball as your best pitch in the major leagues, and you go sign a $150 million contract to play for the Dodgers, and you decide, I'm going to junk it. I'm a fastball guy now. And everyone's just like, wait, what? That's your pitch? And all these things he did well, he just stopped doing. The mobility, a little bit of RPO, the boots, the keepers to set up the moon ball. They didn't do any of it. And Hackett didn't have the courage to tell Wilson, enough, it's not working. This is what we're going to do. We're going to run the football, and we're going to have you throw 20 to 25 times a game until we figure this out. We're not throwing 35 times. We're not going full shotgun. You don't look comfortable in it, and we don't have the personnel. And Hackett, I like Hackett the person, nice guy. He had no courage to hold players accountable or coach his own coaches. I mean, you had so many guys miscast that were in their roles for the first time. It's like guys showing up with wearing their father's suit to work. They didn't know. It doesn't mean they don't know football, but as you know, you miscast the guy. Other than Idro, the defensive coordinator, most of them were in the wrong spots. From the special teams coach to the offensive line coach to Hackett to the running backs coach. Those 4 spots were a complete mess. So can Russell rebound? That's the look into the rear view. It's over. It can't get worse. Every time I say that, though, the Broncos pull up a man cover and jump back in with the Mutant Ninja Turtles into the sewer. So I can't believe it can get worse. But every time I've said that the last 6 years, somehow it does. Why will it be different under Sean Payton? Sean Payton he said this in multiple different ways, Jorge, in different interviews. He's going to take Russell's greatest hits, just like you go to a bar and you're going to do karaoke. I'm going to sing the songs I know. I'm not doing I Always Love You by Whitney Houston. I'm going to do Violent Femmes, Blister in the Sun, something easy. I can't sing. I'm going to do my hits. So he keeps saying that. Do what this guy does well. That's going to be a little bit of RPO, but play action. and boots and keepers and quick. Get the ball out, get it to Jeudy in space, let him go to work, and run the ball to where the linebackers come up, to where you create simple reads for Russell. He jumps the route, go over it. He gives you space, do the slant. That's what he did in Seattle. I'm not saying football is easy, but make it easy for him. He does this, you do this. We're going to run, and then when they come up, boom, we're going over the top. It should work. It's just the difference is Russell's 34, turning 35. Some of his mobility issues were related to age. He's lost 10 to 15 pounds. He looks pretty good this offseason, but I got to see it. And the one thing I would tell people, Russell Wilson will not finish with 16 touchdowns and 11 picks, because if he plays like that, he will get benched by Sean Payton. Sean Payton's not married to him. Like, he didn't sign that contract. He didn't go out and get Russell Wilson. I mean, there's a reason they went out and got Jarrett Stidham. I'm not saying Stidham's better. Don't confuse it. What I'm saying is, if Russell plays 8-9 games like he did the first 8-9 last year, there's no way Payton will stand for that. Either he's going to bench him or he's going to go on, sit because he's hurt. They're not going to end a season with him with those numbers. And the thing about Payton that I can appreciate is he's got a huge ego like all these coaches, but he wants to succeed. His legacy is at stake. No coach has won a Super Bowl with an AFC and NFC team. Very few have taken him to there with AFC, NFC, like Dan Reeves, Mike Holmgren. There's only a few that have even done it. If he even gets them to the Super Bowl in the next few years, he's likely going to the Hall of Fame, meaning Sean Payton. Russell's legacy is at stake. I think he's a Hall of Famer right now, but it's probably on the number. It's close. He needs to play better. He's been humbled. He's changed his conditioning. He's got an edge to him to prove people wrong, but can he still do it? He should be able to. He should. If he stays on the rails and listens to Sean Payton, which I don't think it's not a democracy anymore. That's the thing. Last year, Russell might as well have been the coach and the quarterback. Whatever Russell wanted, he got, which would have been fine if he was playing well. This year, Sean Payton's running the plays. Sean Payton's the play caller. If Russell stays on script with what Payton is doing, he should have a good year. Even if it's 28 touchdowns and 12 picks, that still should get them to a winning record. And that's not great, but he had 16 and 11 last year. 16 and 11. He had to get hot to get to that number 16.
Yeah.
So would he be someone you'd want to take in fantasy? I would say pump the brakes. He would be maybe a replacement guy on a week. I don't tell anyone to take Broncos players until they get better. They have been so bad offensively. They averaged 16 points a game last year. But Sean Payton, in 16 years, averaged 27 points a game, 27 and a half. And it was, well, he had Drew Brees, a Hall of Famer. I'm sorry. Was Drew Brees a Hall of Famer when he went to New Orleans?
Yeah.
Nobody wanted him. He failed a physical in Miami. That's the only reason he's in New Orleans. That Broncos games where he got hurt when he was with the Chargers, he destroys his shoulder. This idea he walked to New Orleans as a Hall of Famer. No, he didn't. He didn't even have a market. So that's a testament to Payton's coaching and working with a quarterback. Russell's different, but Payton worked with Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill. He's had a record, Teddy Bridgewater. I just don't see a reason why he can't get the best of Wilson, not top 5 MVP, but just get him to where he's like the 15th best quarterback. That seems reasonable. Their line's improved. I just got to see it. For me, it's just prove it. I'm just not – and I believe in Sean Payton, the way he's coaching this team, but offensively specifically, I got to see it. And I do think there's a chance they turn it around. But we'll know. The difference is this year we'll know in camp because they're going to play in training camp. Then they're going to play in preseason. We'll have a much better read on them. Last year, no read. We thought it was a bright idea that no preseason snaps and go to Seattle, which was the loudest stadium I've ever heard in my life. Just the idiocy of the stuff last year. If you wrote it out on paper and read it out loud, you're like, wait, what? Wait, what? Wait, what? That was their season. And that will not happen under Sean Payton. They could still be, I'm not saying they could still lose games. It won't be in the embarrassing fashion of home fans counting down the play clock, guys blocking each other on the line, guys fighting each other on the sideline. That stuff should all go away.
Oh, man. Oh, you nailed it. You nailed it. Well, you touched on the wide receivers a little bit. There's so much. I mean, Jeudy had some flashes there at the end of the season last year. I think a lot of people are still hoping that for Courtland Sutton to come back to, before he suffered his knee injury. They added Marvin Mims in the draft. Still got Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler, both coming back from injuries. Can you give me an idea on the pecking order for targets here?
I believe it's going to be Jeudy. I think Judy's going to have an explosion of a year. His maturity, his talent, the play calling, it's set up for him to get the ball quickly. And I've said this, he's better in space than NASA. Just get him the damn ball. Let him get, and I just see a lot of quick strikes to him. And we saw it last year where when they did run the ball, when Rosberg took over the last couple of games of the season, the play action, the moon ball to Jeudy. He's got that kind of high-end speed. He is the one that should be, and I'm not saying I think he should be in the conversation as a Pro Bowler, should be, but there's no reason Jerry Jeudy can't be Tyler Lockett. There's just no reason.
Right.
And I'm not saying DK and Jefferson. I'm not saying that. But when you look at Lockett's numbers, that should be Jeudy. He should be around 1,100 yards, 7-8 touchdowns. Maybe it's more, but that's the number. So when people ask me, I think it's going to be Jeudy. I said that last year. He finally broke out. In his last 5 games, he was one of the better receivers in football. When you look at touchdowns, receptions, targets, he started to grow into the role of, okay, I can be the number one. So for me, it's Jeudy. After that, I don't know, because Sean Payton did not like this receiving corps. He spent better part of 2 months trying to change it. When they tried to get Lazard as a free agent, they tried to get Adam Thielen as a free agent. They tried to trade Courtland Sutton. He nearly goes to the Ravens. And they made Jeudy available. But they asked for a 1 for Jeudy. So no one was going to do that. But this receiving core, for me, it starts with Jeudy. And then Sutton or Patrick, for me, it feels like a one or the other. Whichever one's playing better gets the snaps. It's not going to be all those two together as much. Patrick is more reliable when healthy. He's more dependable. He never drops the football. Sutton has the better upside, certainly the talent. He just, as you mentioned, he has not been the same since knee surgery. He doesn't have that same explosiveness to create separation off the line. And you don't see the springy hops, the 50-50 ball. We haven't really seen that. And Peyton was talking about Sutton the other day and saying, oh, I watched your 2019 tape and, oh, man. And he's right. But I'm thinking, 2019? You know how it is. That's 4 years ago. These guys age in dog years in the NFL. That's a long time ago to say, oh, that was a great season. 2019? That was pre-COVID. I mean, that's a long time ago. So I would say it's a one or the other between them. I'd be very careful drafting Patrick or Sutton in a fantasy league until you get a better read on which one's going to be the guy, because I think they could split reps or take away from each other. And after that, Hamler's going to be a fight to make the team, because I guarantee you Marvin Mims is making the team. You don't take it what they did. And so Hamler, I could see, unless he's just so dynamic in camp, he would be a trade candidate in training camp if you could get something for him. I love KJ. I love the story. He just hasn't played. He only had 7 catches last year. He's had hip surgery, ACL surgery, pectoral surgery. It's just limited him to so few games in 3 years. I don't know how you could say he's going to get healthier, but I don't know that he's going to be in a fight to make the team for me. But when you look at Callaway, they brought from the Saints, Lil Jordan Humphrey, and Brandon Johnson. If you want a deep sleeper for Broncos, Brandon Johnson, the son of Charles Johnson, the catcher, he was up last year. He was practice squad, had a great training camp, twisted his ankle the last preseason game. Then he went home to train in Florida. They brought him back around midseason. He finished strong, and he's looked really good this offseason. That's why, in part, if they tried to move on from a Sutton or Patrick, even in camp, it wouldn't shock me, because of the fact Peyton doesn't care. I mean, he's just, whoever the best player is going to play. He brings it up all the time. This guy was a first rounder. We went with the 6th rounder. This guy was this. We went with it. So if Brandon Johnson continues to play like he was in April, May, and June, he could be a sleeper. It's just, I hesitate to tell anyone to take Broncos players in fantasy until they can prove it. Now, running the football, whether it's Samaje Perine or Javonte Williams, I doubt it's Javonte early. as much as they keep saying he's going to be fine. Samaje Perine early could be a guy that he's going to get 18 carries, 80 yards kind of guy, and he stays in on third down. I would feel more comfortable recommending a fantasy league player taking one of their running backs, because believe me, they are going to commit to running the football. That is a certainty. So take Russell out of it. They're going to run the football. And whoever that starting running back is, he's a guy that could get you some points in fantasy. Their receivers, outside of Jeudy, it's just so fluid right now. It's hard to tell until we see him with pads on.
You talked about the running backs. I mean, you mentioned not expecting big things from Javonte Williams early on. I mean, there was some. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, and I've heard from so many doctors. It takes about a year, and his apparently was a more complicated one, so that could add time. We saw that with J.K. Dobbins. He was still hobbling at the end of the season last year. So, I mean, because of that, Samaje Perine really is going to be a big recommendation. I mean, is it Williams maybe even a stash for back half of the season, or
that's what I would do personally. I mean, he was 7.5 months removed from surgery, and he was out there practicing. I couldn't believe it. And I had talked to Javonte in February. I talked to him in November at his charity event. This is the first time he'd ever been hurt. And he stayed in Denver, lived in Denver, did all his training here. It was just a rock star in his rehab. 7.5 months removed, he was out there on the practice field. But, I mean, you're talking about he didn't have surgery till middle of October. And you're asking him to be fine. So basically in 9-10 months, I just think to protect the kid, let's be realistic with our expectations. Hopefully he blows him out of the water. But to your point, like the last 22 running backs that have had ACL surgery, their track record the next year, not great. Because of it's what people understand is like, well, I had ACL when I was in high school. You're not going against the top players in the world. Yeah, if you were a high school player and you do it, you're still the best player on your high school team. When you start going into the 1 percentile and you take away a little bit of burst, a little bit of violence in the way he runs, all of a sudden he's just a guy. And I don't think he will, but that's the point, that give him a little bit of time here. Dobbins, whose surgery was similar from what I understand, he was never right. And every surgery is different. I've seen like Chris Harris Jr., a DB, come back. He was fine. I watched Sutton come back. He's never looked like the same player. We see it in flashes, but we've never seen the same player consistently. And my one issue is the one thing I'll be keeping an eye on and I bear in mind with Javonte, he runs with violent intentions. He seeks contact. I've said he's Batman, boom, pow, bang, running into guys. Can he still be that guy mentally? Once the leg's healed, can he be that guy? Or is he going to make an effort to I'm going to avoid contact and it makes him better, or I'm going to avoid contact and it's just suddenly not the same runner? People don't realize he didn't even start playing running back till a senior of high school. He's only played running back 4 years of his life. So maybe he looks at it all and says, I don't need to get this extra contact until I get, but I don't know. Terrell Davis, he had ACL. This is years ago. Surgery was different. Never the same after ACL surgery. Wasn't even close, but he was toward the end. I mean, I'm not saying it's apples to apples, but Terrell would tell me mentally he had trouble getting over the hurdle of cutting sharp, and that first couple of hits, it just didn't feel comfortable. So I would put Javonte, I think he's going to be a factor closer to October, early November. But when I say Samaje Perine, here's the problem. Would it surprise me if Sean Payton decides to add Kareem Hunt right before training camp, Zeke Elliott right before training camp, Dalvin Cook? If he's sitting there and nobody's offering him anything and they say, we'll give you $3 million and give you $4 million in incentives, that could happen. That's why I'm like, if you're drafting fantasy really early for some reason, be careful of Perine, because if they bring in another back, now he just becomes the guy he was in Cincinnati. Just becomes a third down guy.
Oh man, Troy, love it. The passion is there, and actually the blunt and important information is coming out. So I wanted to ask one last question on with the skill players. Greg Dulcich had some good. There was some good talk about him. Albert O is still there. The tight end room. Is Dulcich going to be a factor, and maybe Alberto too, or are they really down on the pecking order when it comes to targets?
No, it's Dulcich. And because it's so hard to find a fantasy league tight end that's any good.
Right.
After you get past number 8, they're all just, you're just literally like going to great clubs with your haircut. It's just haircut roulette. That's when you're putting like tight end 10 on in fantasy, you're literally just hoping you get lucky, right? I mean, there's just not a lot of great. Dulcich, Sean Payton's eyes lit up when he talked about Dulcich this offseason. He sees him as a joker role, which he used with Alvin Kamara or Reggie Bush or Sproles. Get him in space in mismatches. I don't know if he's going to love Dulcich once the pads are on and the blocking part. He's a willing blocker. Alberto Cuebanam's issue is at times he's not a willing blocker. It doesn't click at all. Athletically, he's a marvel. But again, a lot of guys in the NFL, great athletes, doesn't ever materialize. But keep an eye on Dulcich because we may know in preseason that they're going to show their hand, but Dulcich is a guy who I could see doubling his production from last year. So I'm talking 55 catches, 600 yards, like 4 touchdowns. He could be that guy. Not huge numbers, but where you go like, okay, they like him, and there's going to be certain games where he has 6 catches, 72 yards because he has real top-end speed. I mean, and he was open a lot more last year than they even got the ball to him. Issue was he had all these hamstring issues. He'd never had a leg injury in his life. He gets to rookie camp a year ago, blows out his hammy. Then he goes home for the offseason. They think he's right, comes back for training camp, and then he blows his hammy again. So he missed so much time. He's addressed that. He's taken a professional approach to it, his diet, his stretching, all these things. Smart kid. I mean, his only other offer other than UCLA was Columbia. That was his one D1 offer. He was a walk-on at UCLA. Really bright kid. I like his future. Alberto, I don't know where it lands with him. I would think that if it doesn't really show up fast in camp, he might be a trade candidate as well because they have Hudson they brought in as a blocking tight end, and they brought in Adam Troutman from the Saints. So I don't know where Alberto fits in. I really don't. If Dulcich is the guy they think he is, I don't see the fit personally for Alberto at that point. But Dulcich is a guy that could be an X factor. Troutman is a nice player, but I don't know where he fits in. Chris Manhertz is the blocking tight end. So he's making the team because they're running the football. So now you have Troutman and you have Dulcich, and I think that's kind of – and one more. Hudson could make it as a blocker or quasi-blocker. I don't know where Alberto fits, but if you're going to look at – again, I say sleepers with Broncos because they just don't produce enough. Other than Jeudy, I think could. He's probably the safest bet offensively in a fantasy situation. But Dulcich from a tight end situation – I'm telling your listeners now, keep an eye on them in the preseason because he's a guy that could go from is he even a starter to like week 3 you look up and he's got 13 catches for 130 yards and a touchdown. He could be that guy you could really help you because Payton doesn't throw around a lot of compliments. He's very intrigued by Dulcich, and that tells you that he's got his mind has a way of how he's going to use him. And he doesn't talk like that about a lot of players. So that's why I think Dulcich, health willing, is going to be a factor.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, he's the tight end 14 on underdog drafts right now. So, kind of out there. So it looks a little bit like a sleeper. So he's definitely a guy to keep in mind. So I love it. Thank you, Troy. This is awesome. So you mentioned the offensive line had some improvement to it. Ready to take a step forward. I remember you were very, very blunt and honest about them last year.
Yeah, it's been an issue. I mean, it's too many guys. They've had more right tackles than Spinal Tap's had drummers. They're going to have their 8th different starting right tackle on opening day in 8 consecutive years. Again, when you want to know why they stink, it's coaches, quarterbacks, right tackle. I mean, all these positions that you need consistency from, if not excellence, but certainly stability. McGlinchey's not great, but he should stabilize the position. He's a good player. You overpaid. When you buy off the showroom floor at a car dealership, you're overpaying. That's what free agency is. It's a B player. You're given A+ money, but he's going to stabilize the position. Ben Powers at left guard. I love Dalton Risner, the person. They were ready to move on. Ben Powers, according to Pro Football Focus, did not allow a sack last year. And he's a just absolute physical force in the running game. He's a powerful guy, pun intended. they should, and they need Bowles to come back healthy. He had a really nasty ankle/broken leg last year that he only played 5 games. And his career has been defined by availability. He's been healthy for the most part. They need him to figure it out because he's gone through so many line coaches, so many coordinators, but Sean Payton's not going to have patience for him in penalties. Like Bowles has got to be laser focused if he wants to be part of their future going forward, long-term future. He's certainly part of their present. But there should be better. My biggest question mark on the line is Bowles' health coming back from that, and Lloyd Cushenberry at center. If you meet Lloyd, fantastic guy, everything about Lloyd, family, good guy. He just has not been physical at the point of attack. And can he be that? They brought in this Kyle Fuller who played with the the Seahawks, a bigger guy who could challenge him. They drafted the kid from Oregon. His name's escaping right now in like 6th round. And so there might be competition at center. They've said no. They're really bullish on Cushenberry. I was surprised because they were ready to move out other guys. They were really bullish on Cushenberry. So they see something in the scheme fit that maybe with Powers next to him and Quinn Miners, like maybe there's a fit there that they see. But Cushenberry is the biggest question mark. But you go left to right. You got Bowles at left tackle. Can he come back healthy? Ben Powers should be good. They paid him a lot of money, $28.5 million guaranteed to be good, and he's coming off a great year. Cushenberry, question mark at center. Quinn Miners at right guard is just an absolute brute. He should benefit from this physical running game. And McGlinchey, while he had issues in pass protection at different times, one thing he's really good at is run blocking. From his days with the Niners, he became a really good run blocker. So I would expect him to do that here as well, to establish that identity. They're going to be physical, they're going to be tougher, and they're going to run the ball more.
Oh, fantastic. Well, let's take a quick look on the other side of the ball. If you're going to play in the AFC West, you got to have good DBs. And Patrick Surtain is the second, is one of the best in the NFL. How do they are they still going to be fairly formidable against the pass? And how do they shape up against the run?
Well, here's a crazy concept. How about get a lead in a game so you can actually use your pass rush? How about not being down 17-3 at half? And everyone's like, oh, they play all these one-score games. When teams get ahead of them, they don't put anything at risk because they can't score. They're not putting their quarterback at risk when they know the other team averages 16 points a game. So some of it's a misnomer of, they played so many close games. Teams took the foot off the throttle in the fourth quarter at times because the Broncos offense is so terrible. There's just no reason to chance it. But so let's say they lead more, or just play even, play neutral more. Pat Surtain's as good as it gets. Whether you like Sauce Gardner, whatever, he's as good as it gets at corner, from technique, from knowledge, from athletic ability. He's long. He's 6'3", 6'4", 205 pounds. He and Justin Simmons are the same size. Simmons is a free safety. Surtain is everything you want in a corner in terms of his length. And again, he's more polished than Pledge. Everything he does is right. It's literally like watching a videotape of how to play corner. You could watch his games and come away thinking, that's probably how I should do it. It's almost an instructional video at times. Damari Mathis on the other side from Pitt was a rookie last year, got thrown into the fire when Darby got hurt, blew out his knee. And it stinks because Darby was playing well. Mathis had a terrible first game against the Chargers, 3 penalties. But what I like is he had amnesia to it. He didn't panic. He played. He's physical. But he's going to get pushed by Riley Moss, the kid they drafted from Iowa. So keep an eye on that. Moss may initially be a dime or nickel guy, but they didn't move up in the draft for Moss to not play some. So keep an eye on that. Will he push Mathis? Maybe he won't, but there could be competition on that opposite side. Whoever it is over there has to be decent, because the problem with Surtain was he was too good for his own good. They just stopped throwing at him.
Right.
Many games where he was getting 1 or 2 targets. That's it. So they need the guy on the opposite side to be good. Their secondary with Justin Simmons, he's great at free safety. They bring back Kareem Jackson. Caden Stearns could start, though, at strong safety, with Jackson playing more of a nickel dime role. And then you look at K'Wan Williams. He's great in nickel in the slot. He's got to stay healthy. So my issue with their secondary, while it should be the strength of their defense, is the fact that they're thin. They're a little thin. They're kind of one injury away where you're like, yeesh, especially at corner. Now, Moss could be better than I think, and they paid some money for undrafted free agents, so they got some guys, but that's a position of concern. The pass rush last year, once Chubb got traded, was terrible. They had 12 sacks the final 9 games. Vance Joseph comes in. When he's had the right roster in Arizona, he was good at getting to the quarterback. So can he be a little more creative? Frank Clark with Randy Gregory. You got Jonathan Cooper, Nick Bonito. They need Cooper really to have a breakthrough season, frankly. And maybe you got something there. I like the Frank Clark signing a lot, but people sometimes I think they're confused. He hasn't been a great regular season player. He's averaged 5 sacks over the last 3 seasons. He's more of a playoff guy. He's unbelievable in the playoffs. In the regular season, he's a 5-sack guy the last 3 years. So you're going to need Jonathan Cooper to step up. But if there's one player to keep an eye on, it's Drew Sanders, the kid they drafted from Arkansas. They are going to use him as a pressure player inside and outside. He's not – someone asked me on a podcast last night, he's going to be Micah Parsons. No. That's a Hall of Famer. Stop. But Sanders could be versatile enough to where one play you line him up outside, and all of a sudden he's outside. He moves in. So you have a package like the NASCAR package with Clark, Gregory, and Sanders in, and Sanders becomes a problem. And he's really long for an inside backer, crazy athletic. So keep an eye on him. Their defense should be good. They ran out of steam at the end of the season. They went from, giving up 14 points a game. They ended up average giving up, 21 a game. They ran out of steam. And they stopped getting to the quarterback once Chubb left. So Vance's challenge is to keep them stout, but also find creative ways to get a little more pressure. And some of that could be natural if they're leading in games. It's way easier to pressure the quarterback if you're up 14-7 or 17-10 late in a game, especially at home at Mile High. So they should be good defensively. The depth is a concern for me at corner. D-line, still a little bit of concern there. The D-line's hard to evaluate until they put pads on. I'll be honest. The offseason, they got some guys I like, but some of these young guys that they're high on, you just can't tell until they put pads on. Because some guys take to it, and some guys you're like, ooh, he just doesn't look like the dude anymore. But Drew Sanders, keep an eye on the rookie linebacker from Arkansas. He'll play inside, play some outside. He's set to play inside, but I can see them as the season goes on moving him around as an X factor.
Oh, fantastic. Troy, geez. Yeah, it's like you hit it out of Coors Field today. This is awesome. Great. So much great insight. Thank you. Thank you so much. One last one, fun one to kind of close things out. Any recent Mexican food discoveries or hot takes you got? It's great food. I know there's great food in Denver. Yeah, well, I spent a week in Idaho watching my son's Westmont College team win the national championship for NAI. So Idaho is not great for Mexican food. I'll just say that. It's not great for Mexican food. The best Mexican food I've had recently, you appreciate this. My sister-in-law was up for Father's Day last weekend. We perfected, because I haven't been eating meat for a few years. It was more of a stomach issue, not because of some weird – it's just I stopped eating meat. And so we always made pork green chili. And I love green chili. And so we came up with this recipe. I was messing with, she's the cook, but I was messing with how to come up with a recipe of essentially a vegetarian green chili. And we added this jalapeno mix. We cut some of the hottest peppers I've ever used and like almost ghost pepper. And it was so good and so hot. I'm kid you not, Jorge, a vat of it in 2 days. It was so good and so hot. And it was homemade. So we added a little flour. So the next day it was thicker, so you can eat it like a soup. And it was just, my mouth was hot, but it wasn't on fire where I couldn't taste it. That's always the challenge. I love hot food, but I don't want it so hot where I can't taste it. And as I get older, obviously with my, you get into the 50s, I don't need something so hot that's just going to, go right through my stomach and, feel like I'm on fire. But we made this green chili. She did most of it, but it was a jalapeno mix that she bought at the dollar store of all places. This little jalapeno mix with the jalapeno peppers, with some of the basically stock from the other green chili batch she was making with the pork. So I didn't have the meat, but I had some of the stock. Add a little flour. Oh my God, it was so good. So I'm hoping I can make it myself. I'm doubtful of that because I'm not handling the kitchen that way. But that is the best Mexican food I've had recently. It was this homemade green chili
that I ate enough of it to basically feel like I was going to speak Spanish for a year after I ate it.
Well, muy bien, mi amigo. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, yeah, whenever you want to try it out, you just let me know. You try out a little Spanish, let me know. So I love it. Pump. Well, let's close up shop. Pump anything you got coming up.
Yeah, you can find all my work at Troy Renck on Twitter, Troy Renck on Facebook. I'll be anchoring on Denver 7 a few times here and there. I go to Jerry Jeudy's camp next week, so I'll have content from there. I still write about 3 times a week in the off season, do a thematic piece of what's like, break down the tight end room, or what is it going to look like defensively on the sack numbers compared to last year. And you can find that at denver7.com/Broncos. But this is a little bit of my downtime this next 4 weeks, as I do a little bit of work, just enough to stay active, but trying to pace myself for when the Sean Payton training camp comes around, because it's going to look remarkably different. And it's going to be longer days, remarkably different, less access. So I'm pacing myself for training camp, but that's where you can find my stuff. And you can always hear my podcast. It's Broncos Podcast with Troy Renck. You can find that wherever you get your podcast, but Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever. That's where, and I can't thank Broncos Country enough for the way they've taken to the podcast.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm still regularly listening to it. So love catching the passion. So yeah, great stuff there. Just like you got great stuff here, Familia. Keep again. More reason to get into this NFL Insider Series. Like and subscribe us to Familia FFP on YouTube. Get those notifications, and if you want to get them on audio, we're still going to be on there. We're just like on the Broncos podcast. We're on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you to Spotify for Podcasters for putting us out there. You find me at Jorge Martin 17. Also, little content coming out here at FamiliaFFB.com. Going to have some stuff coming out there. Maybe some other sites. You're gonna see it. So once again, to Troy, muchas gracias. Thank you all for joining us, and remember, todos somos familia. Salud.